So, good morning, everyone. My name is Yannis Konstas. I'm the coordinator from W4S, and I got a silly title today. I'm the master of ceremony. I don't know what that entails, but I'll start by just introducing the day. Yesterday, we had an excellent day. I would like to thank all the speakers, from the first presentation to the last question, the last answer, and the best part of the day, the cocktail session, were excellent. We don't have a cocktail session today. However, we have a series of panels and distinguished speakers that will enlighten us on the topic of the day, which is about energy communities, renewable energy, accelerating Europe's transition towards a climate-neutral, inclusive future. It's a catch-all title of a day, trying to describe what four Horizon projects did the last 3 years. Now, the first, we're going to have Mr. Tyke O'Brien from the European Commission give a keynote speech, stepping in as Mrs. Tesarova was not able to come due to sickness. Then we're going to have a quick fire pitching session for the four projects. The setup today is a bit different than yesterday, meaning that rather than have long presentations, we're going to have shorter ones, and then we're going to try to dip in the various aspects of the projects, stepping in and looking at success stories, looking into policy recommendations, and the last session that has to do with the legacy of the projects. Because in the end of the day, okay, we did the projects, we finished them. Most probably, we're going to go through the review, comments or not comments, I don't know what will happen. But what is there to stay? What is the real value we're going to add to our societies and our economies? And today, we're going to have the networking session, and I'm happy to say we're going to have a co-creation workshop, a DIY gender-equal RES sector, dive into practice with W4S towards a gender-equal RES sector that you are able to attend if you want after the lunch and after the legacy panel. Now, I have to stop talking. People who know me know that I have a tendency to talk a lot. So, I would like to introduce to you the first speaker, Mr. Tyke O'Brien, who works at the European Commission, Directorate General for Energy, covering consumers, local initiatives, and just transition. Tyke was a member of the task force on Brexit under Michel Barnier, and previously worked in the Commission's Secretariat General. Before joining the Commission, Tyke worked on Ireland, Northern Ireland, single electricity market, as well as working in financial services, including as assistant to Deutsche Bank Chief Economist Professor Norbert Walter. Mr. O'Brien, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, everybody, thank you very much for this invitation. I know that Adela would have liked to be here. She's been unfortunately ill, but this is why we run the unit as head of unit and deputy. So sometimes she has to step in for me, but more often I have to step in for her. So I think it was early mid 2016. This is back when I was in the Secretariat General of the Commission, and we were working and we were preparing what became the Clean Energy Package. And I was in Berlin. It was one of these big conferences organized by, actually this time by the Auswärtiges Amt, by the German Foreign Ministry. And I bumped into Dirk van Sintjan, who I'm sure many of you know. And of course, the discussion turned around to energy communities and what it meant and what we were thinking of doing. Well, when I was thinking about coming today, I remembered this because I think it's hard to remember just how new at the time the idea was of real citizen ownership of the energy transition. Or at least, maybe I should put it a little bit better, how new it was in the European discussion for policy discussion. Because energy communities, and citizen involvement in the energy transition, I mean, it's been shown to be a real bottom-up process driven by vision and commitment of many individual people, many of whom are here today. And and people who saw the need that the energy transition had for something that went beyond what was in the 2009 Renewables Directive and the 2009 Third Liberalisation Package. Not instead of, but going beyond it. And I think that's why one of the major innovations then of what this clean energy package that we talked about was the development of renewable energy communities and citizens' energy communities within the legal framework. So from 2016, when the proposals are made, through to 2019, when the legislation is adopted, which is this anchoring of the concept into European legislation, and since then, and I'll come back to some of that too, about how that's been putting down deeper and deeper roots. But I just wanted to say, okay, so before I talk about all the great things energy communities can do, just to recall that they're still very much a niche. So it's not the main way that most people access to energy, and many people don't yet know what an energy community is. But there's great potential here, because there's a study that the Joint Research Centre, part of the European Commission, performed, which says that energy communities could account for about estimate what's possible is 17% of all wind power production and 21% of all solar power production by 2030. So this is in some respects, the possibilities. Now, I don't know if this will be achieved, can be achieved. In many respects, this is up to you here today. But this is what is possible. Some of the barriers, though, in this regard, and this is also why we're here today, is the lack of human, financial and technical resources to achieve this. We have to bring the resources together. Lack of public, not so much interest as awareness, as I mentioned. And let's say the full potential for cooperation with local authorities and all has not been taken up yet, who are there. So, and then for many people, and I'll come back to this again, a slightly uncertain or unclear policy framework, which is not so much a problem for us as Eurocrats who like to see things and nice, neat things, but it creates a problem when it comes to understanding how you can finance these investments and how it can be part of it. But going back to these numbers, the Commission does see energy communities as a crucial part of our path towards 2050, and go one step further than 2030, of a sustainable future and climate neutrality by 2030. And just to take one example, the solar strategy envisaged one energy community per municipality with a population of more than 10,000. As I was reading through this again, I just realised I should have a little note here telling me how many municipalities have more than 10,000, particularly as our unit, and my thing is we cover the Covenant of Mayors and really engage with local initiatives, but unfortunately I don't. If anybody knows the number, please put up your hand. And that's with energy communities bringing together private investments to build and benefit from hydropower, solar PV, and all the things we talked about. And helping, this is an important additional point, helping to deliver increased public acceptance of these projects. So it delivers increased public acceptance, but at the same time energy communities give a direct benefit, and this is the linked part of it, because it gives a direct benefit to those participants in the energy communities by allowing them to, this is something that we saw was very important during the crisis, to decouple their energy costs, at least in part, from the major movements that are happening on, on wholesale markets. So we're there, where do we stand? We're standing at a point where there's huge potential, huge necessity for developing energy communities. But what are we doing to achieve that? So, to achieve it, to reach these kinds of figures that the JRC pointed out, something of that level of ambition. So, the first point I want to make is that we are really working hard. This is the classic Commission job to deliver a stable and clear regulatory framework for energy communities to allow them to prosper. This means working with member states to ensure effective transposition of the clean energy package. Now, I think, during the pandemic, during the COVID crisis, I know that many ministries had what's termed a tax, and they weren't, everybody was moved on to the health departments or something, and they took people away from different other departments. And I know that in some ways that this meant that the effective transposition of the clean energy package was delayed. But at the same time, how would we have known that the energy crisis was the one that was coming around the corner, and how much better we would have been had, for example, energy communities been implemented before the energy crisis, and how much more resilient would many communities have been to the energy crisis if this framework had been in place. This is a point that the Commission has made several times in various in our Repower communications going on, is that implementing the consumer empowerment, including the renewable energy communities, which are particularly highlighted, is a critical part of ensuring resilience. But there's more than that. We need more than that, and it needs a wider enabling framework. I think this is something that, going back again to the Clean Energy Package, the sense of a wider enabling framework was always critical to the idea of what was being proposed and what was being developed, and continues to be critical now. So I just want to highlight a few of the initiatives that we are doing, and I know you might know about them, but just to put it maybe in the context of how it fits into a wider strategy. So we have the Energy Communities Repository, which assists local actors with setting up and advancing clean energy products driven by energy communities. We have the Rural Energy Community Advisory Hub, contribute to doing this at a rural context. And we know that we're going to set up the energy community facilities to continue these efforts, providing seed funding for starting energy communities to procure the necessary services and assistance. So really working with individual energy communities. This is moving away from the way the Commission often works, as let's put legislation in place, to really working on the ground to ensure that this can have its have the full effect that it should have. Then, thinking a little bit beyond that, we see the need for local energy agencies, public authorities, and more mature umbrella energy communities to play a crucial role in developing this concept more broadly. In the wider framework of regional or local transition plans, whether that is in cities through the Covenant of Mayors, whether that is on islands through the Clean Energy for EU Islands initiative, where energy communities plays an extremely important part. And I just want to talk about this idea of, we see this idea of umbrella energy communities, or this sharing of expertise, is being something that's particularly important, because it won't be just the Commission delivering support. Because in the, how to put it, in the best tradition of community and cooperative action, there's a role for more mature energy communities to help smaller energy communities to engage, particularly in the very, very technical elements that are involved in energy supply, and I'm thinking here of balancing. I think this challenge of managing balancing and balanced responsibility as you act as a sort of supplier and engaging with the system is going to become increasingly more important. We see examples of this already. I could give you some from the Netherlands with BECoop and RE-energising, but I could take examples from this country where we are, in Belgium, I could take it from Germany, I could take it from many other countries. And I think this type of cooperation will become increasingly important if energy communities are going to play the type of role that I talked about, which is, you could say, is equivalent to the type of role, maybe different, but this is something conceptually similar to the type of role that cooperative banks and credit unions sometimes can be seen to play in the finance sector. But we have to think as well, how do we do that, and how do we scale up, and how do you cooperate to make sure that energy communities, including smaller ones, are able to participate in the market and are able to offer the proper services to their members and to their clients that they need to do. Now, before I finish up, I want to turn to two other issues. It's a bit more maybe controversial, or certainly controversial because they're subject to ongoing negotiations. The first one is the issue of energy communities in gas, and as you know, as you may know, probably do, that the Commission proposed to align the gas directive with the electricity directive and introduce energy communities here. Now, from the positions of the Parliament and the Council, I think it's clear that some more adaptation is needed specifically to the gas sector to allow renewable gas to be brought in. However, I think it's important still that energy communities have a potentially very important role to link rural producers of energy, of biogas and so on, through to city or municipal consumers. And I put the emphasis here particularly on the municipal idea, as well as those people who will continue to use gas. So for communities in cities who need to continue using gas for whatever reason that is, but want to use biogas and want to do that, then this role of potential for energy communities in gas is also extremely important. And the second point here is to ensure the competitive offer of energy communities. I think it's important that energy communities are able to match the kind of dual fuel offers that the traditional energy suppliers offer as a backbone of what they do. And the second point here is that sometimes the difference between energy sharing and energy communities gets elided. But this is important to remember. Energy sharing is fundamentally a technical concept about how electricity is divided between the different users. Whereas the very important difference with energy communities is their legal form and their objectives and their substance and the non-profit nature and the community involvement in them. And it's different from the technical part of energy sharing. And that's why in the electricity market design we propose to give a right to energy sharing to all customers. And this will allow families to share energy between themselves. And my favorite example here is of the family who gives their child access to some of the electricity from their solar panel to keep them warm during who's studying in another city, to heat their water or heat their house, their apartment on other times. And I just like the example because I think of when I was in university and it was the equivalent was coming back with a bag of laundry. Maybe this is a slightly better way of approaching it. Now, I've no doubt that energy communities will make an important part in facilitators of these kinds of actions. And even that many of those who are first interested in energy sharing for some other reason, to share among their family or just to have a little way to sell some of their excess energy from their own production, will, if energy communities step up, are able to offer some, let's say, support service to this, will eventually want to become more active in the energy community and perhaps become full members. So the starting point would be the energy sharing rather than the energy sharing being something that some people have said that should be kept for energy communities. I think it's the opposite way. I think this is the general approach. So to conclude, and I hope I haven't gone over my time, first of all, the future is bright for energy communities who have an important role to delivering the energy transition. Second, the Commission will continue to work and support the emergence of energy communities. So there's a lot of support available. But energy communities will have to grow and develop and cooperate to reach their full potential. And then that means being ready to take new opportunities to do that and not stay in a comfort zone. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien, for your very interesting opening keynote. I think you already gave us a lot to think about. Mr. O'Brien will participate in the panel later on, and he will be able to answer to questions. Now we're going to move on to our next panel. So I would like to ask Mr. Hapizanis, Mrs. Oka, Mrs. Relano, Mrs. Zedron to come up and join us at the panel. I forgot to check and get their bios, so I'll share with you fun facts about them. I know one per each. I don't know anything about Mrs. Oka. Those you have to, please.
Okay, we see.
Yeah, so.
You can all jump. And the ladies will just be sitting here. Would you like to have a seat? Wouldn't be a bit rude.
So, Dimitris, he's the coordinator of BECoop. He's an avid cyclist, or at least it shows like that when you do the calls, and he's in his house, and there is a huge bike behind him. So I assume he's an avid cyclist. Dimitris, the floor is yours.
You know so many things about me. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Hello. Good morning, first of all, and thank you for joining us. I think it was really nice because we were here yesterday as well, and we somehow closed the day by gradually talking more about energy communities. I'm really happy that today we'll have the luxury of time to really invest on that topic. And I'd like to respect the given time frame, so I'll just cut to the chase. But before talking perhaps about what BECoop is all about, I'd like to say also a few words about why BECoop, and perhaps also connect that with the points raised by Mr. O'Brien as well. So as also discussed yesterday as well, and over the last years, we've indeed witnessed some remarkable steps in the EU renewables landscape, right? Now, however, at the same time, we do witness, let's say, more slow penetration of renewables in the EU heating and cooling sector. Yesterday, we also said how this should be more of a concrete plan in the national planning framework, but we currently see that this sector itself already accounts for more than 50% And that's rather concerning, right? And this figure is expected to increase. Now, at the same time, among the available renewable energy sources, it is bioenergy that holds the, let's say, the highest potential for replacing fossil fuel heat. That is what scientists claim again and again. And now, since today, and at least in our framework, we want to talk about renewables uptake, we do realize, and that's already quite straightforward, that you cannot just, I mean, if you want to have a higher penetration of renewables, you cannot just rely on the scientific advances, on the technological evidence. This is something, this kind of uptake clearly depends also on people's perceptions. So, also building upon Mr. O'Brien's keynote lecture, in this context, the concept of community energy provides the ideal framework not just to move more towards like a more effective and fair transition, but also to address and increase social acceptance of renewables. And for us, that's really, really important. So talking about RESCoops, there are already thousands of RESCoops out there, right? But in practical terms, their dispersion all across Europe is still rather limited. And among the existing RESCoops, the majority of them, they focus on exploiting solar or wind energy. So it is only a small share of RESCoops that currently rely on bioenergy and biomass, and this is where BECoop comes in. So what do? Our project, we basically focus to provide the necessary conditions for, we've talked about potential. We want to unlock, we want to activate the underlying market potential of bioenergy communities. And through our support scheme, we do focus, we really want to aim and reduce both the time and budget required for the successful development of such initiatives. Now, what we really want to do and what we focus on is to mobilize people around and establish a better picture for community bioenergy heating projects. And, well, how do we do that? So we have, it is a CSA project, it is a Horizon project. We have market, social research, we have technical and business components. We focus on knowledge transfer, and we have also a policy analysis sector. And basically, we develop a suite of supporting tools and resources, and you'll have the chance to get to know them better also in later slots of today and at the poster sessions above, upstairs. But most importantly, we test these assets in our 4 pilot cases, in our 4 pilot regions. And this is where we basically explore the development of 4 new communities, and this is what we call our BECoop RESCoops. Now, our pilot regions in Spain, Greece, Italy, and Poland, they have their own specificities, right? So they might represent different framework conditions. They might have different renewables penetration. They might have a different level of maturity in terms of establishing a community project, and they often, in our case, they have different stakeholders that serve as project initiators. And all of that, for us, is a great basis, because through our project exploration, so by providing our services to each and individual case, we end up with a synthesis of complementing evidence across the EU, and at the end of the day, that's what makes our project and our approach quite replicable. So based on our results, what we do, we also try to ignite a policy debate, a debate on how, on the actual means by which community bioenergy can be promoted at all levels, so regional, local, national, and EU level. We've recently published our roadmaps, our policy roadmaps, both at the pilot and at the EU level. And throughout these years, we've hosted numerous events and workshops, and we have quite successfully, I must admit, established valuable synergies with more than 20 projects. And I'm really happy to see that many of you represent these projects. We've established a really valuable pool. We call it sisterhood. There are many words that we use. We've also developed a collaborative briefing right? And you can find it, I have 1 minute left, and you can find it in the entrance as well. So in terms of synergies, we're really proud of how we joined forces. And over this last year, we also identified 8 replication cases, as we call them. These cases were supported and guided to employ or even replicate the BECoop methodology, so they've used our resources and tools. And we can say that by now, the BECoop approach was and is already promoted in more than 12 cases across Europe, and that's something for which we're quite proud. So last but not least, we also, building upon the entire project experience, we've developed the BECoop Replication Handbook. You can scan the QR code if you haven't heard of it, but the point is that this is one of the very first handbook of its kind because it really focuses on bioenergy community, and it provides an overview of the necessary steps for developing or even expanding a bioenergy community. So this handbook, our policy briefs, all our reports and all our assets can be easily found online. You can see the links over here. You can check them at the poster session. But all in all, what I want to say is that after 3 years, we do believe that these assets, the ones that we've developed and the ones that we've worked with other projects, they don't just help towards making community bioenergy much more appealing, but eventually we do believe that we do contribute in having a higher penetration, a higher uptake of bioenergy heating technologies in Europe. And very last slide, it's 12 of us, so the project was made possible thanks to 12 partners spread across 7 EU countries. It was a 3-year-long project, and during that period we had at least 2 babies that were born within our consortium. So yeah, we joined forces, and I have to admit that we really enjoyed the journey. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dimitri. You put a Greek for a moderator, and the first speaker of the panel is another Greek. We are already delayed. I mean, this does not really help national stereotypes. Our next speaker is Ms. Simona Deoka. Is the only person, I don't have any fun fact to share with the crowd, so it's up to you.
It's a pity, because we have a lot of fun facts to tell. But okay, we'll get to know each other today. So first of all, thank you for the organization of this event. I know it took a lot of efforts, a lot of bumps along the road, but yeah, that's great to see everybody here. I got a warning that I had to stay within 5 minutes. My presentation was too creative, apparently. So I'll try to do it as fast as possible. So, of course, we're all talking about energy communities. When we decided to work on this project, now more than 4 years ago, we really thought about a fair energy transition mode. And we thought, okay, let's try to delve into this concept of allowing citizens to be their own boss, to be able to manage themselves, their life, their energy bills. And so the concept of enabling the peer-to-peer transaction in the energy market was very appealing to us. So we started to put together some brains, and we brainstormed on how to make it possible. And then energy to peers came along. So here the idea was really to leverage on existing communities, some pioneers communities that were the very first one to test this model of peer-to-peer energy transition, and use this small model that was unique in his own way to teach other communities to expand this model and to make it work also in places where either A, legislative context, B, frameworks that were not like physically ready to allow peer-to-peer transaction at one point would have been ready to adopt that model. So we focus on these 3 main pillars that is somehow the core of the Energy to Peers project, if you want. So first of all, like I said, learning from experiences from pilots for developing what we call a readiness level framework And this indicator is really like the key for starting up a new community, understanding where you are right now, and then moving forward with a very, meticulous approach for you to understand where you have to go next for becoming a peer-to-peer energy community. If there are barriers, how to overcome. If you need advices, where to find it. The second point was to learn from existing companies that are already in the market to propose these services, like in terms of ICT, IoT and ICT services, and to work with them to expand the model and to make it easier sometimes, to make it more complicated, to make it adaptable. But the key was understanding the smart demand mechanism, optimizing it, and then try to make it in a model that could be expandable. Why we want to do this? Of course, for different reasons. We know that this model could help families to save on their financial budget, because it would cut greenhouse gas emissions, so that would be fundamental, but also would increase the local resilience. So it's not just sustainability per se that is considered under the financial or the environmental impact, but it's of course also the social part that was the key enablement here. And the third part, a little bit like what I've seen from the BECoop project before, a way to learn from these experiences is to develop advisory apps. So we know that it's not just technology per se. Technology alone does not resolve the issue, but we really need to work with a knowledge issue here. So another key point of Energy to Peers is to develop this advisory app could really guide either municipalities or small groups of people to set up their first energy community. In very short, what we managed to achieve very proudly after 3.5 years with Energy to Peers, first, growing smart. We really want to grow smart with these small communities that then thought other communities in what we called laggard communities. We were proudly successful in setting up several new energy communities in Italy in areas where before really the legal and legislation was not allowing us to do this. So we're really proud of this success. We went around with energy, with the Energy to Peers Roadshow. So we went to the communities, we talked to the people, and we've learned from them what it meant to be part of a community. Second point, enhancing people. We're really successful in enhancing the knowledge of these people through the advisory app. And here it's really work of communication and collective efforts to be part of this community, like online community in the advisory apps. And then the third point, make it simple. We know this is a painful process, this is a painful environment to navigate. So the idea is really to create this regulatory roadmap that country by country, member state by member state, would solve that bottlenecks that are, of course, there, and step by step trying to move closer to what the European Commission is trying to achieve. We know that, of course, there are bottlenecks in member states, countries, and we know very well in Italy, we know in other countries that are there. But so the key elements are from Energy to Peers, in which we can really say we're proudly successful, are embedded in these 3 points. So thank you. Thanks to the people that are part to Energy to Peers, and thanks for the organization of this event. We're really happy to be here in these days and talk more about energy communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Soka, for the tight presentation. I would have warned you earlier, beware of the Greeks setting jokes. So I was really strict with you. Our next speaker is Mrs. Lorena Sanzerellano. She's from Spain. She lives in Ireland. The family supports Real, but she really doesn't like food.
I said you got everything yesterday for me, so that's fine. Yeah. It's a good summary. So thank you very much, all of you, for joining here today. To me, it's a pleasure to represent the Upstairs project after so much time. So it's at the same time kind of sad because we are coming to an end. We started in September 2020 after some delays due to the pandemic, unfortunately. Well, I'm representing here IRC, which is the International Energy Research Centre. As Yannis said, we are based in Cork, Ireland. And we are 11 partners from 7 different EU countries, and we are the project coordinator. So, well, already my colleagues introduced what are energy communities, and Upstairs is related also to that. The main objective in Upstairs is to uplift energy communities by establishing 5 different OSS across different pilots in Europe. So our initial pilots were the ones that are shown there in the map. So these are Barcelona metropolitan area. Then we have Cork City Council, where we are based in Ireland, the region of Upper Austria, municipality of Asenograd, and we used to have also a municipality of Bruntal in Germany, but well, I will tell you later that unfortunately this pilot finally have to leave the project. So the first thing we do when we started Upstairs, it was to design the business model framework that was going to be carried out in each of the OSS. As you know, each pilot is totally different, so we needed to know what were the specificities of each pilot, and first of all, designing what services were going to be offered in each of the OSS, and at the same time, what kind of technologies we were going to address. So, as you know, energy communities now in the European legislation can be distinguished between citizen energy communities and renewable energy communities. We are kind of addressing both types, depending on the pilots. So, Barcelona and Austria are more focused on renewable energy communities, addressing only renewable technologies or mainly. And the rest of the pilots are also addressing energy efficiency. And in the case of Asenograd, we have also addressed heat pumps. So the pilots that are targeting renewable energy, apart from the heat pumps in Asenograd, are focusing mainly on PV energy. So after designing this business model framework for each of the pilots, what we did in each of the OSS was that we have first to, well, we knew that in the OSS we needed to have some people who were able to guide the citizens. So something that all the pilots have in common is that they offer a service of guidance in the citizens, like from the first moment they attend the OSS. Well, they arrive here, they are provided a list of suppliers, the people in the OSS offer legal, economic, and technical advice. So in order to find like what's the best solution tailored for each citizen and in each of the pilots, each one it's running in a different way. So after defining what was, as I mentioned, this business model framework, what we needed to have was like people especially trained to this effect in each of the OSS. So to this end, what we did was to design a training program. This program was also tailored to each of the pilots because, as I said, not all the pilots were addressing the same technologies and were offering the same services. And the OSS are not structured either in the same way. So, well, we could say at this point that one of the best things that Upstairs has done is to try to tailor each of the circumstances in each pilot in order to design, like in the best way, the necessities of the people attending there. So, as I said, we designed this training program. We were running them throughout the beginning of 2022, and finally, in summer 2022, we got most of our one-stop shops open. The one you can see in the picture actually is the one we have in Cork City. It's very well located actually, And well, in the rest of the pilots, the approach can be slightly different. So for example, in Barcelona, and my colleague Ivanka will be able to speak better about this later, they have created by now like 9 different OSS in 73 municipalities. And well, they are planning to grow even more and to establish like up to 25 one-stop shops. In the region of Upper Austria, they have also like a central OSS in their local energy agency. And in Asenograd, it's hosted by the municipality. So one of the biggest problems we encountered in upstairs was that, for example, in the municipality of Bruntal, we were not able to find an organization that was able to run the OSS. So we needed to, at the end, give up on this pilot and find another alternative. This was replaced by the Rhodop region, also in Bulgaria. So we had to get an amendment done, and they finally joined the project now in June 2023. So complementing the services offering on the OSS on site, we also developed a digital platform. Within this landing page of the digital platform, as you can see on the right image, then you have the option to log in each of the pilots, and the good thing that it has is that you can get like online advice, not only physically. And also we have posted there like all the repository materials that we created for the training, and all the necessary links that are important in each of the regions. So containing information for energy communities, their establishment there, the legal framework in that region, all the financial grants available, so all that kind of information. So we've been running both in parallel. We got actually very good results in the OSS. We found like people were engaging quite easily, even if it was kind of difficult to convince them to gather together to create energy communities, but they were very interested in deploying renewable technologies and their willingness, and also trying to make like some home renovations. Whereas on the other side, for the digital platform, we found that there were like some barriers, not only technological, depending on the group of population, but also in terms of time. So, well, it's some of the main issues we found out. I'm not going to talk so much about the barriers we face, because I think they are going to be presented now in the policy session. But, well, just as a summary, I think that one of the main problems that we have when gathering people together is that they usually have like a lack of trust, as we mentioned yesterday, not only in the institutions, but sometimes in each other. So, well, this is all from my side. You have here all the details of the project in case you want to know more. We have the access of the digital platform in the project website, and also the social media. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Our last speaker, Giulia Zedron. She's from Italy, she lives in Brussels. And if you want to get her upset, tell her that you like pizza with pineapple on top.
Yeah, that's a good way to start. Okay, so I will now present to you the W4S project. You will see that in many aspects, the approach we follow is close to the approach followed by the other projects that have been presented, but we look at the challenge of promoting the adoption of renewable energy sources from a different perspective. So we take a gender balance perspective. That's not the right direction. Okay. So the innovative concept behind W4S is based on the idea that we can promote the adoption of renewable energy sources by involving more women in the sector. Specifically, let's say with W4S, we focus on the heating and cooling market. But before I start telling to you more about how we did it, just some quick facts about the project. This is a 3 years Horizon 2020 project. We are reaching now the end. This is our last month. And the project brought together 12 partners from 8 European countries: Italy, Greece, Bulgaria, the Slovak Republic, Germany, Belgium, Denmark, and Norway. So how did we come up with the idea of W4S? We started by looking at the sector and at a very specific segment of the sector, the heating and cooling one. You have already heard some of these numbers from Dimitris before, but the heating and cooling sector alone, heating and cooling alone makes up 50% of Europe's final energy demand. And as of 2020, there's a typo on the slide, as of 2020, just 23% of heating and cooling was produced using renewable energy sources. So we still heavily rely on fossil fuels, coal, natural gas, and this heavy reliance on non-renewable energy sources, of course, contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, and the heating sector alone contributes to 38% of these emissions. So then we looked at the sector from another perspective, the gender balance. If we look at the number of women scientists and engineers in Europe, we know we are not close to gender balance. But if we look at the renewable energy sector, more specifically, the numbers are even lower. So, for example, only 32% of the workforce in renewable energies consists of women, and only a small group of women takes up roles in STEM or other technical jobs, just 28% and 35% respectively, while the larger amount of women in the group tends to take administrative jobs. So in W4S, we take these two, let's say, type of information that we received so far. Then we know from the literature that the role of women is recognized for its potential as agents of change, so they can bring a great contribution in the transition toward renewable energy sources. And this is how we came up with the concept of addressing the transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy, and to do so by scaling up a more active involvement of women, be it as entrepreneurs, decision makers in businesses, policymakers, and consumers. And by doing so, support, let's say, achieve the targets that the EU has set for 2030. Let's take a look at how we did that. So we started by setting up 8 regional hubs, one in each country of our partner organizations. We really took the time at the beginning to bring together stakeholders from the quadruple helix, so we involved people from the industry, from the academia, local policymakers, civil society, and we really started by trying to understand the local framework conditions, the needs of the people, their barriers when it comes to adopting renewable energy sources, but also barriers for women in the sector. We also identified case studies, successful case studies of women in the sector. We studied their stories. And together with these people in the hubs, we co-created a series of market uptake support measures consisting of business support, technical support, capacity building, and awareness raising. And we deployed these support measures in the different countries in 2 rounds. We did so. And we also organized in each country dedicated hackathons tailored to the specificities of the regions, where we try to understand the impact of our actions and the measures that we were providing. And then we organized cross-country dialogues to exchange lessons learned and best cases across the countries. So now that we have reached the end of W4S, what have we achieved? During the project, we have set up an observatory. There you can find information and tools about the tools and resources that we have developed. You can find a forum with the latest developments in the sector and the projects that we have supported. We have our 8 regional hubs that you can visit to check information on local statistics and financial framework, for example. We have created a support scheme for women-led projects in renewable heating and cooling, and we have successfully supported 56 projects. And even though W4S is ending now, this doesn't mean that the work in these projects is over. The people will keep progressing, bringing on the work we have started together. And more about these projects will be shared in the following sessions. Then we have organized national campaigns that have contributed to increasing, let's say, the awareness locally. Specifically, we have organized capacity building seminars in each country. These seminars were focusing on gender mainstreaming in companies and organizations in the renewable energy sectors. And we really invite you to join our workshop this afternoon that is organized by our partner WCF from Germany. And then we have translated all our results into policy recommendations and a replication guide and toolkit. And of course, the work we have been doing as W4S represents a first step, but our results are accessible for all those that want to replicate our work and keep progressing to support the development of a more competitive, inclusive, and gender-responsive renewable heating and cooling sector. So of course, there's a lot of things that we would like to share with you, but I believe we will cover all of these in the next sessions.
Thank you, Julia, and all the panelists for the excellent presentation. Thank you for your patience to my silly jokes. We'll move again to the next panel session. So if you, it's time to, and the next session, I'm going to give the mic to a colleague who is, you are the colleague, Pedro Leon. So you ask the people to come up.
Okay, so could we have the panelists for the next session, the speakers, up here, please? So we're going to do some fire pitches here. So we're going to have really snappy presentations, and people are going to tell you a little bit more about some of the projects that we're talking about, and then we're going to have a talk about some of the more significant issues. This panel is titled Driving a Clean Energy Transition Through Tapping the Biomass Potential, Boosting RESCOOPs and Empowering Women as Agents of Change. And we're discussing the project recommendations. So what we're going to be looking at here is what did everybody find out within the projects and what are the recommendations for policymakers to move things forward in this space. So first, I think, who are we going to have first? Diana. So I'll just introduce Diana. So, do I have the microphone?
Yeah, that would be good.
So Diana is a senior expert in energy policies and transition aspects in IEECP. She coordinates the EU LIFE project Justice in Transition and Empowerment Against Energy Poverty, JUSTEM, and supports work in other EU projects. Her research focuses on political and social aspects of energy transition as well as energy modelling. Diana studied environmental science at the University of Oldenburg and Kingston University London, and she has her PhD from the University of Hamburg on social and geographical aspects of the local energy transition. So over to you, Diana.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for the introduction. And yeah, great to tell you a bit more about BECoop. I mean, you heard already an introduction before. So basically, the starting point is really that the EU needs to accelerate decarbonization, specifically in the heating sector. So the heating sector is a bit behind. And when we look kind of into the options, you may wonder, what is about bioenergy? And in fact, did you know that 75% of bioenergy in the EU are currently used for heating and cooling? So there is kind of a huge potential. Despite actually this fact, if you compare bioenergy to wind and solar, it's really kind of lagging behind, so not much has been developed. Specifically also if you look in, into bioenergy communities. So there are just a few out there yet. But despite, actually, there is a huge potential for bioenergy communities, of course, not only in terms of, renewable energy production, but also when it comes to you really getting citizens involved into the transition, to really get more towards decentralized energy production, and also making Europe more independent from energy imports. And that was also a bit the starting point for the research we conducted within BECoop. So really to look into, what can we do to really unlock the bioenergy potential within the European Union. And for this, we conducted several workshops with local stakeholders. We did an expert survey across the EU, and we also did a comprehensive review of existing policy documents. And based on that, we actually developed one EU policy roadmap and also 4 national policy roadmaps for the pilots of the BECoop project in Italy, Spain, Poland, and Greece. So let's have a look what we kind of came up with. I present you now our EU policy roadmap. Yes, next slide. Perfect. Here you see it. So this is kind of our proposed policy roadmap, really to accelerate bioenergy communities in Europe. And there are kind of different proposals within it. So first of all, in really short term, we need to propose to introduce a EU clear-wide definition of bioenergy communities and to create kind of new funding mechanism to really facilitate the development. Second, we suggest an immediate transposition of the RED II directive and also its revisions into national law to really support bioenergy communities more. We third see the need to distinguish really between community energy for heat and electricity. Now it's often only focused on electricity, and of course if you want to have also a more focus on heating and community energy, that needs also changes in the legislations. In medium term, we see the need to really recognize district heating networks as a kind of essential infrastructure, really also specifically to decarbonize the heating sector. Fifth, we suggest to implement EU-wide rules to support community energy initiatives, possibly, of course, via tax incentives, but maybe also regional subsidies to really make it more attractive to expand bioenergy communities. And last but not least, we recommend the launch of kind of an EU-wide initiative and awareness campaign, really to create more awareness about the benefits of community energy, targeting really education systems, but also kind of the wider public. These recommendations, of course, are based on different challenges and barriers we kind of identified, and we really believe if we take them up, then it will be really possible to create more kind of positive narratives for bioenergy in the EU, to create really awareness, and also to really speed up the local diffusion and adoption of bioenergy in the EU. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Diana. So next, I believe we're going to have Anna. So I'll do my best to do all the pronunciations, but you can't really trust me. So it's Anna Klopper. Okay. So I'll tell you about Anna. Anna joined UIPI in November 2002 as the Communication and Project Officer, and she orchestrates both internal and external communication for UIPI. And while also managing the organization's involvement in EU projects. Embarking on a new chapter 3 years ago, she relocated to Brussels looking to further her expertise, and she got a master's degree in communication studies at, I'll struggle with this one, Vrije Universiteit Brussels. And prior to her work at UIPI, Anna was a project coordinator within the domain of online news media. So thank you, Anna. Now I give you the microphone.
Thank you very much. So hi everyone, as announced, I'm working for the International Union of Property Owners, and today I'm happy to speak about the Energy to Peers project. The Energy to Peers project, as mentioned before by my colleague Simona, focuses on the development of energy communities in 4 diverse countries, in the Netherlands, in Slovenia, in Italy, and in Spain. And the policy recommendations I'm about to present have evolved from experiences from the ground, as these countries have faced many challenges. But interestingly, despite the differences in regulatory, environmental, and social contexts of these countries, we could identify some common barriers, and so our policy recommendations are based on those barriers and can apply to all of the countries. Thank you. So I start with some highlights of EU-level recommendations. Actually, the next one, sorry. So in total, we drafted 24 policy recommendations, but I'm only going to present 5 of them since we only have 5 minutes here. So the first one is the development of clear business models. The pilot countries stated that the procedures to establish energy communities are too complex and too time-consuming, and it is often unclear how different stakeholders can be involved. So therefore, we suggest supporting energy communities by offering templates, case studies, and expert advice to help them develop clear and actionable business models. Additionally, we recommend creating a dedicated database where communities can learn from successful business models. Then going to the second recommendation, funding and financial support. So our partners have expressed issues concerning the access to adequate financing from banks, coupled with a notable absence of transparent guidelines regarding incentives and pricing. Therefore, we propose the establishment of funding programs that include grants, loans, and venture capital targeted specifically at energy community initiatives. Encouraging financial institutions and investors to get involved and educating them about the secure return on investment is also a priority for us. And then the last recommendation on EU level, empower citizens and increase knowledge. We already heard before today that it's still an issue that many citizens are not yet aware of energy communities, or they don't trust them yet, or they don't find motivation to do an extra effort because they don't see the added value. Therefore, we propose to disseminate clear guidelines on renewable energy communities and citizen energy communities. This can be achieved through educational campaigns, workshops, and resources. Because I don't have a hand free, thank you. So now I'm continuing with two of our national policy recommendations. The first is a comprehensive regulatory framework. So not all countries have transposed the EU regulation around energy communities. Some actually did, but they transposed it word for word, and so there is a lack of country-specific elaboration. For example, this was the case for Spain and Slovenia. So therefore, at national level, we advocate for the development of a comprehensive regulatory framework that extends beyond EU directives. And this framework should address the unique challenges and opportunities associated with energy communities. It also should encompass energy law, real estate law, grid connection, and consumer protection. And this brings me to my last recommendation that I will present today, the financial, administrative, and logistical support. So here our pilot countries have stated that sometimes they face limited access to essential resources and expertise, meaning financial means, technical know-how, and support required to effectively navigate the complexities of managing energy communities. So to assist energy communities, we propose providing grants, subsidies, technical assistance, and capacity building programs. We also recommend establishing dedicated support centers or agencies to guide communities in managing financial aspects, administrative procedures, and logistical challenges. And this brings me to my last slide, where, of course, I will use the occasion to promote our website, but also the report that will be published soon. So I invite you to check it out if you're interested in reading also the other recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna. So now we're going to ask Pavel to speak, and I'll introduce Pavel there briefly. So Pavel is representing, going to talk a little bit about the Upstairs project in terms of policy recommendations, and he's a project manager at the Polish National Energy Efficiency Agency. He's a scientist, a lecturer at Warsaw University of Technology, Poland, and University Côte d'Azur, France. That sounds quite nice. His main professional domains consider energy efficiency, low carbon economy, and water-orientated environmental aspects. So over to you now, Pavel.
Thanks a lot, Patrick, for the very nice words. It's a great pleasure to be with you here this morning. I would like to see some outcomes out of the Upstairs project. Very interesting concept, and what was found is really interesting to highlight, because as Lorena has already introduced the project earlier this morning, several different energy communities, but in the end they all face kind of the same problems that has to be tackled. So let's have a look on that. So one of the things that we must be aware when having the energy community is that first it's community, but the community is constituted out of the individuals. So it's a very difficult thing to tackle, because there are some individual activities that people might like to introduce, but are they aware to do it? Do they have the competencies? Well, that's not quite clear. Sometimes they are established out of relatively simple, in a positive way, people who are just involved in kind of the initiative or a project, right? So this is something that must be kept in mind, because it might be really a problematic issue. So one of the things that are really, really challenging is always the legislative aspects. Tough legislation, hard even for the people from the field. So if we speak about just ordinary people dealing with this stuff, it's a barrier that is really, really difficult to go through. So there's lots of work to do in that field, and that leads to the educational issues, so how to inform the citizens about the initiatives, and how to just sell those kind of the ideas to the audience. So taking that into account, there are several opportunities that can actually accelerate the establishment of the energy communities. So close cooperation between the municipalities and one-stop shops is kind of essential. And from my side and from my experience, it's always that one-stop shops, they do play a key role actually in doing this stuff. Because most of the time from the local municipalities, we have people with a lot of awareness, but they expect from one-stop shop that they tell them how to do this stuff. So this is what is really, really important at that place. And this willingness to incorporate into the engagement of the energy communities is that we have a unique occasion actually to establish kind of the framework that would be not only for one country, but it could be more universal. It's kind of difficult because from one side we need to adapt to the national frameworks and so on, but on the other hand we are following the EU policies. So this is something which helps at this point. So in the end, what kind of the recommendations we can find out of all this stuff? So definitely energy community is something that should be sold to the audience as something relatively simple. Because for us, people dealing with the stuff, it's kind of easy to understand the concept. But if you look for people who are less involved in the field, then sometimes even climate change to be explained is a challenge. From my academic experience, I encounter this every year, which surprised me a lot, because people in their 20s, they're not able to explain in their own words what is the climate change. So if you ask them what is energy community, then that's definitely something not they are understanding at any point. So there's lots of actions in terms of the promotion of these initiatives, why they're beneficial and how they can play a role in the energy transformation, which is actually the key element at the moment. And of course, one of the most easy aspects to understand are the renewable energy sources, because there's lots of talk about them for many, many years. So this could be like a nice highlight to sell when introducing the energy communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pavel. That was excellent. So I'd now like to introduce Elisabeth Tjerk-Elsen. How's that? Not bad? So from European, and you represent the European Green Cities for W4 RES. So Elisabeth has been Director of European Green Cities for the last 10 years. She started her career by working in the Danish Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, primarily with urban renewal, international and experimental housing and building projects before joining the Royal Danish General Consulate in Dusseldorf and the Urban Renewable Company, SBS, with responsibility for international EU and particularly EU projects. After that, she was head of Department for Supplementary Education at Aarhus School of Architecture until 2013, where Elisabeth started as Director in European Green Cities. So over to you now, Elisabeth.
That was very revealing of my age. Okay, thank you very much. I've been looking forward to this, and I can tell you we are then one of the partners in the Women for Rest project, and we have had the very interesting challenge to try to make the policy recommendations, and that's what I'm going to tell you about. But first, allow me just 2 words on European Green Cities. We are a non-profit company working to develop green cities in Europe, and we have a network of 57 cities in 19 countries, and the 2 red dots, that's us. We are located in Denmark, in Aarhus and Copenhagen. Yes, I am going to say something about the policy recommendations we have reached to, but I would like to say first that, as also mentioned earlier, we see women as a great big potential in the green development. And you know, women, they are about half the population of Europe, a little bit more even, but only 30% entrepreneurs. So at least there you have a potential of 30%, 20%. And what we've been focusing on is how we can support women in driving market uptake of renewable heating and cooling. Yes, and we have developed 5 policy recommendations, but with a lot of sub-recommendations. So we really urge you to look into the website to unfold them. But I will just mention them and tell a little bit about a couple of examples. First recommendation is to support gender balance renewable heating and cooling sector for future generations. It's promoting an inclusive workplace, advancing gender equity, institutionalize awareness on gender mainstreaming, and last but not least, raise and provide funds for women-led projects. Yeah, I will start with the first one, support for a gender balance renewable heating and cooling sector. I don't think I have to mention a lot here because I'm sure you're all aware how important the next generation is and that we must support our daughters and granddaughters in choosing also these STEM educations, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we should facilitate this and make skill training wherever possible. The second recommendation is to promote an inclusive workplace. And as the time is very short, I will just jump into an example, and that's actually ourselves. European Green Cities as a working place. We try to walk the talk. We have learned a lot through these 3 years of the Women for Rest project. We try to have this gender policy for employing, and if you count us on the picture there, we are actually 5 women and 5 men, at least when the picture was taken. We offer everybody a 30-hour work week to have a work-life balance. We have possibility of remote working. For now, we work 3 days in the office and 2 days at home. And then we try to develop a travel policy, not only focusing on sustainability, you know, taking the train whenever possible, but also to consider the families. Policy recommendation number 3 is advancing gender equity. Well, this is inclusivity in training. For instance, if we have the possibility of influencing the local authority, that's an obvious possibility. it's of course also focusing on the collecting of data. That's extremely important. Decision making, communication, gender smart policies. And then the theme of today, also promoting women involving in the energy communities as a great big potential for the development. Number 4 is institutionalize awareness on gender mainstreaming. And here I would like to mention another example, visibility of women-led initiatives. And it's actually a result of the Women for S project. One of the projects we have supported throughout the project, namely the International Architect Conference in Copenhagen this summer. And we supported them in the communication and dissemination. And it was a big success, more than 6,000 architects from all over the world. And as you can see, we also had the chance to tell about Women for S at the conference to really a lot of different people from very, very many countries. The last recommendation is to raise and provide funds for women-led projects. I would like to finalize here, as the theme is energy communities. I can mention that we have been working the last 5 years in a suburb to Copenhagen, Avedøre. It's an area with 6,000 inhabitants and 3 very large social housing companies. And these 3 women you see in the left corner, they are chairpersons, I must remember to say persons, for these 3 social housing organizations. And through their work we have been able to provide support with a number of projects. And well, I just wanted to mention that actually the starting point was energy efficiency first, because they got the idea of Avedøre Green City because they stood in front of a large renovation project. But it has developed. They have made an energy community there. We have made some canopies for electric vehicle chargers. We are working with a lot of PV on the roofs, on the facades. There's been a low temperature district heating renovation as well, and they are provided with heat pump, energy from heat pump, and now also they are establishing a data center there, which will generate the surplus heating for the district heating. And then we try to include other things than energy, because that's one of the things energy communities can provide financing, also of cultural and social events. Yes, I think I have taken my time. Thanks a lot.
So now, I'm going to try and do some furniture moving, as well as invite the speakers and the panelists up here. So will we try that? Will that work, Marine? So, if you could come up here. So I'll do the furniture removal, okay? And if my maths are correct, there'll be enough seats for everybody. Okay, I'll just have to. You're not in the panel? Okay. Where did I put my phone? Just left my phone somewhere. Oh, yeah. Okay. So while everybody's sorting themselves out, I'll just introduce, so joining the speakers are 2 more panelists. Tig O'Brien from earlier, so I won't do an introduction again. He needs no introduction, actually. And Stavrula Papa So Stavroula Papa is a policy advisor on BECoop.eu, and Stavroula is an EU qualified lawyer working as a policy advisor at BECoop.eu. Her role entails the representation of the Federation European projects that aim to design enabling frameworks for energy communities in different EU member states, and explore how citizens and energy communities can take a more active role in the energy system. She holds an LLM in Energy and Climate Law from the University of Groningen, and her research focused on how energy communities could promote the energy transition of non-interconnected islands. So, maybe first, and I know I'm maybe putting Stavroula on the spot. Maybe I could get her feedback maybe on the fire pitches that we had over the past few minutes.
Sure, happy to. Thanks a lot for the very nice policy recommendations. I took plenty of notes, so I have some things to mention, and I also would like to say that for the W4S project, it's very impressive what you have been doing for women empowerment. I have a point on BECoop. Let's start with the first project, and a point plus a question, because it was mentioned on the roadmap, the proposal to include an EU definition of bioenergy communities. So if I understand it correctly, the idea is to include in EU legislation a new definition for bioenergy communities. And if this is the case, I have a point on that. So as it was already mentioned that we already have during the clean energy package, there were introduced two different definitions for energy communities, renewable energy communities and citizen energy communities. And those two definitions establish energy communities as market actors that can engage in a lot of different activities. So we have been observing in RESCOOP EU the transposition process of the legislation for energy communities around Europe, and actually Mr. O'Brien already mentioned we are coordinating the energy communities repository, and in the policy work we are drafting a report per member state. So we have observed the process of transposing those provisions around Europe, and I can say that already two definitions are enough. It's pretty complex for citizens to understand why there are two and which one they should choose. So my proposal would be that now we have energy communities as already established market actors. They can engage in different activities. We don't need a definition per activity. So just to make it clear, I see Esek already is our member from Greece, and they are doing a great job in Karditsa. They engage in bioenergy, but they also have developed recently a virtual net metering project, so for self-consumption with solar panels. So an energy community as a legal entity can do a wide range of activities. We don't need to include more complexity and legal complexity with new definitions. What is important, because I understand that it's different activity that an energy community engages in, has a different set of barriers that exist. So on this regard, what would be really useful is to have some regulatory measures specifically addressing those barriers, or some guidance from the member states or from the local authorities to support these activities, so bioenergy and energy communities engaging on this. So that was my first point. It was already mentioned through several projects, the need for effective transposition, and I couldn't agree more, because oftentimes many barriers that exist at the national level can be overcome with the proper transposition of the EU provisions. So I'm looking forward for this to be complete. It was already, I had a point that could be useful also for BECoop, and it was mentioned by the presenter of the Upstairs project, the close collaboration with municipalities at the local level, and potentially for bioenergy, it could be really useful to have a good and close collaboration with municipalities. And there are oftentimes distinct barriers with this, including public procurement laws that do not necessarily allow local authorities to provide direct financial support to energy communities without tendering procedures. So this could be something that could be explored, and it could be a policy recommendation towards national governments to provide some guidance on public procurements. I couldn't agree more with the recommendation of both Upstairs and RE to peers, on the need for more awareness and the need for educational campaigns, because already we have in Europe different trends. In some countries like Germany or in the Netherlands or in Denmark, energy cooperatives have a long history, so people are more familiar with it. But in the Balkans and the eastern part of Europe, if you just ask people what is an energy community, they don't know. So we really need to speed up the process of raising awareness on this, and then there's a huge role of, it's actually an obligation for member states to include an enabling framework for energy communities to participate in the market, and one of the elements of this enabling framework is access to information. So this is something that also citizens and the civil society should ask for from their governments. And finally, for the last project, the W4S, I'm not a gender and inclusivity expert, so I learned a lot more from you rather than you can learn from me. But what I can share is maybe our experience from our network in Rescue EU. We have a lot of our members that are interested in the topic, and they have observed some barriers at the national level, and barriers can be very simple. For instance, in Greece, and we heard that this is the case for Italy as well, it is very common that the electricity bill is in the name of the man, so the name in the father of the family. So, and I wanted now to become a member in an energy community in Athens, and in order to do a virtual net metering project, so self-consumption, you needed to have the bill in your name. So this was actually a barrier for me to be able to participate in the energy community and in the activity of self-consumption. So these simple barriers can actually be the reason why an energy community has more men than women. And it should be also clarified to the membership that, because oftentimes we say that it's important that one person from the family is a member, because then the whole family gets the benefits. It's important to understand that the membership in an energy community is also about the decision-making, so the participation in the General Assembly and the empowerment that the member gets out of it. So we exchange with our members on the barriers that exist, but we also have great best practices to share among our membership, from the simple thing of doing the General Assembly in hours that are convenient for women, and having someone there to take care of the children while they participate in the General Assembly. So because of this interest in our membership, in 2021, we set up the Gender Power Working Group that we have with our members to exchange this knowledge. But we also wanted to go a step further and do something more practical. So we decided collectively with this group on an ambition statement where we showcase our ambition for the next years. And we also, and I note this down because I was sure I wouldn't remember, we have specific commitments that our members committed to, and this ambition statement now is also signed by our board. So also Rescue EU is committed to that. And some of these commitments include integrating gender equality, a gender equality clause in the statutes of the energy community, reflecting the principle of gender equality in the composition of the governing bodies, so not only women participate in the community, but women participating in the board of the community and the decision making. And also aiming at gender balanced and just membership by 2050. And when you have those targets, and this commitment, a lot more work is being done than to the community to integrate and achieve those. And finally, because I think I talked too much already, we are also participating in the equality platform that has been introduced by the European Commission to provide some more gender equality on the energy sector, and we really welcome this initiative. Thanks a lot.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks, Stavroula. Maybe I could ask Tig maybe for a few words, just to reflect on what the speakers have been telling us about in the respective projects there earlier.
So, well, first of all, I really enjoyed the presentations. I look forward to, actually I'm going to forward them on to various colleagues, the recommendations and seeing the more detail of it. I think it's important, because one of the big issues we have to do is to really develop into concrete action plans and work on what it is we do. So what comes is some high-level reflections. But I just wanted to say, actually, during your speech, Elizabeth, if you saw me on the phone, it was because I was already forwarding a link to the Women for Res website to our internal DG Energy Equality Network as something that we should pick up on and think. Now, I don't know where to start, but maybe one of the things I should pick up on is what was a common approach across, I think, all the presentations, all the reports, and I think we have to think about what it means is the call for a better, clear legislative framework. So, first of all, I think I picked up on this was a national level concern. I didn't hear many people calling to open up the European definitions at this stage. We can come back to the BECoop point again. And I think that's a very important point. We are really trying to work with member states to ensure effective transposition, but transposition is one thing for the legal framework, and the next one is the implementation, the understanding of what happens. I think it's important that we understand what's this here, and there's only so much that's done by the legislation. What really matters is how it's implemented and the understanding, which is another point I picked up on here. So we have to have a proper transposition, legal frameworks in place nationally, but we also really have to see how that's implemented. And then another point that came across from many of the presenters was this idea of having clear models that people, the information created. And these are more reflections that I have, and I'm not quite sure what the answer is, but I think we've got a discussion to have between the top-down process, where it's the state and a publicly established one-stop shop tool, and a bottom-up process that allows the models to develop. I think we've got a discussion, a thinking to have in this, because there's also a sense of how you could going back to the legislation, how you can exploit the abilities of the legislation by doing that. And I bring it back to, and I think Pádraig will understand, anybody who's from Ireland will understand, the way that the credit union movement emerged in Ireland and became very important was tied more to a bottom-up process, building on examples from everywhere, a bottom-up process rather than a top-down process. We could say the same thing about farmers' communities. So what can we learn from that? And then what does that teach us about what the state or the public authorities need to do to allow those two things to happen? So we have to make sure that this discussion happens in a way that really works. And drawing on the lessons of where, and you have to be careful about how you use words, but the cooperative movement or the community movements in other areas have been successful. Now, this brings me to another point here about who's going to do this. Now, we do a lot of work. We've mentioned islands here several times, because you brought it up as well. One of the things I noticed, and again, when I was meeting the people from the Clean Energy for EU Islands initiative, from individual islands who are supporting development of clean action plans on islands, who often set up energy communities, you will find that it's the same person or the same group of people who are involved in setting up the energy community, who probably were involved in setting up the credit union, who are probably involved in running the local football team, who are probably involved in either a trades union or involved in a church action or whatever else. They're the same people. We know the people when we meet them, and it's so we have to look at how we find these people and leverage them to be active in this area as well, because they people who know, sometimes it's made fun of, people who know how to run a committee, people who know how to achieve the objectives, and as well as there's all the work we can do. So yes, we have to make it easy for them to say, here's how we look it up, but we have to also find ways of finding these key enabling people. I think it's a key point. And I just want to add, and this is coming to my last point, my experience, certainly my experience growing up in rural Ireland, was that many of them are women. It's not that it's an exclusively male thing. There will be a bit of gender thing here. Maybe some men were more involved in the football team. I can go back 40 years to when I was growing up. Some women were more involved with the church, whatever the thing is. But it was very much something where you have the ability in your identification to build on this, aiming for a gender mainstreaming within that context. Which brings me to a last context, because I really found the recommendations very interesting. And there's a tension here. I think it's a tension between soft quotas and hard quotas. And I'll just reflect here, within the EU and our approach for renewables. And a lot of people have criticized having targets, saying it's the renewables target, so we can say it's criticized the wrong way, but I think it's undoubted that it was very effective in bringing renewables production up. But the focus of those targets has changed over time to be much more, more indicative at a European level and less hard and binding at the member state level. I think we have to think as well about what kind of targets we want to achieve, and then what are the best tools to achieve them for female empowerment in the energy area, which I want to highlight, I think is very important for the reasons I pointed out in terms of active engagement and participation. And I liked your point, I don't know how to do it, but at the end of the day, for the electricity system, you as a customer, you're just a number. You're really just, you're not Tygo Breen, you are customer NV541246 who's got this off-take point from the system. And so we have to see to make sure that that's not what you become, that is also associated with women as well as with men. I hope there's many things I could talk about other than that, but I think I talked already enough, so I'd happy to pick up on those again.
Fantastic, thanks very much. I'm just getting my notes out here because we've a lot to go through. So one of the things that we probably on a different note was maybe if one of our speakers would like to maybe talk about the changes that the COVID crisis and the Ukraine war has made with respect to energy communities and engagement in this sector. Maybe we might go to Pavel about that one.
Yeah, that would be quite logic, as Poland is close to Ukraine. So sad to sad, but in fact there is not a lot of work in terms of the energy communities regarding Ukraine, because what happens over there, it was more like Poland invited and kept quite a lot of Ukrainian refugees, but there's been not a lot of talk about the energy at all. So somehow this was neglected by the government. And as you know, we are just after the election, and we are about to change the political party, which is in power. So from my side, I'm more than happy to be more EU open again, because it's been tough 8 years in that sense. And also due to just some demagogy issues regarding last several years out of the past political party, they didn't focus on such important aspects to integrate energy aspects into their policies and also the energy communities. There's been some talk about the energy clusters. That's what we have tried to introduce a couple of years ago, but we were blocked at the legislation issues. It was so complicated that even people who wrote the legislation, they barely knew what they did. And when we spoke with municipalities, they didn't have a clue. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but it was like something kind of discouraging. And then in terms of the energy communities, I think it will be growing interest in that kind, especially due to flying energy prices. And in Poland, we have this very specific situation that the government is just artificially keeping the prices lower than they are at the market. So right now, once the opposition party gained, since next year, they will no longer support that kind of the initiatives because it's just cheating the people. So I guess it will be a nice opportunity to be more open to that kind of the initiatives. But I don't believe that Ukraine with its energy system is ready for that kind of initiatives right now. I think it's too early to think about that kind of the process. They're more focusing probably on reconstruction of the system, and probably once the things get a little bit cooler, they might be interested in that kind of the initiatives. But as for now, it seems like a very, very far away story from my perspective.
I'll just get close to the microphone. Kind of moving on from that, because one of the big impacts of the Ukraine war and COVID has been a huge spike in energy prices, and I imagine a huge increase in energy poverty. What sort of a role, Diana, do you think that energy communities could play in alleviating some of the worst aspects of energy poverty and supporting a just transition?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think in general there are a lot of opportunities specifically like for energy communities, of course, like, to produce energy locally so that they get really, like the people get empowered, can really produce it locally independent from kind of energy, imports. Of course, it requires specific support schemes in the sense that everyone can also afford it. So what we see kind of currently is, of course, that the people who put up solar panels or to get engaged in energy communities are usually the ones that are better off, that have kind of some savings. We heard about like, challenges also to get a loan like from specific banks. So I think there's a specific support needed to be really inclusive. I mean, that's also what a just transition in general means. But I think it's very important also to mention that, energy communities have a lot of potential, not only in terms of renewable energy, but also in, pushing energy efficiency measures, in conducting people, going towards renovation. So there is kind of this new initiatives also on citizen-led renovation, which I think have a huge potential, specifically, for also the energy poor households to get more engaged in the whole energy debate.
And I'm probably hopping around in topics a little bit now, so I might go over to Elizabeth a bit now. And one of the things that struck me from one of the earlier presentations was that there was, there is significant issues with respect to female participation in certain areas of the renewable energy economy. But what I did notice was that the percentage of women in renewable sectors was significantly higher than the oil and gas sector. And that seems to be there's a lot of evidence out there that women tend to be more motivated with respect to renewables. Where do you think this is all going to take us if appropriate policy steps are put in place?
Okay, just to understand, you ask if we get more women into these STEM educations, where will that take us?
More women than men in this sector, or do you think it'll just maybe, there'll be a small incremental change over time?
Yeah, no, I see it as really a great big potential if we can get more women activated, also in these more technical parts. In the energy communities, if we can manage to really activate more energy communities, and I think women have a potential of promoting that. It will also support a development where you keep the profit of the energy in the local society, and I think that will engage more women. So I think we could really start a very good circle there.
And I suppose, one thing I was going to say as well was, there's a lack of skills and a lack of capability in the sector as a whole, and having more women in the sector would support providing actually more human power, excuse me, to support this. Diana, you wanted to say something?
I actually wanted to say what you were saying. So what we see already in the transition regions, like the regions really transitioning away from coal or that are carbon-intensive regions, they have like really a transformation ahead, also a transformation in the workforce, so new skills are needed. And we have seen sometimes really a lack of actually skilled people already. So I think it's really a lot of untapped potential also of women specifically to go into the energy sector and have really an active part there in the future.
Brilliant. And Tyga, I think you wanted to add something? Oh yeah, okay. Yanis, the floor is yours.
First of all, we haven't yet uploaded the policy recommendations. They are due on next Tuesday, so will be uploaded for everyone sometime in Monday afternoon, in any case. Second remark, all the things that Elizabeth and her team put together were one way or another results of the various co-creation activities that took place, going from the bottom up, from the interviews, from the case studies developed by WCF, where we saw something that is really, really important. We saw a lot of cases where women did not provide necessarily technical skills, but they provided leadership, especially in rural communities. They took over the initiative, and they were far more effective to convince their local communities to take up initiatives and, you know, make decisions that were very hard to do in putting up wind turbines, for example, in small islands in the Aegean, or convincing other people to join an energy community in Germany, where initially a board told us that they were discussing how to attract women that were only men, and they didn't know how to do it. So they brought a woman there, and the woman not just provided leadership, but provided insights. And then all this created a new change. What I want to say is that, especially for women and energy communities, what we have seen together with all the partners in the various activities, the hackathons, is that we need more leadership, and women are capable of providing this leadership at the grassroots level far more effectively for two reasons. The one reason is usually they have more time, and this is something that is changing. It's a good thing, because we are going into a world where there is a fairer distribution of duties within the house, and this is a good thing. But for the time being, in Eastern Europe, in Balkan, this is the reality. So they are better positioned to take the initiative. The second thing is that there is a difference with women and men. Men seem to, and I cannot point you to specific data about it, but tend to focus on short-term profits, whereas women usually have a longer-term perspective. As mothers, as grandmothers, as long as they keep this huge advantage, because we are so sighted, we cannot see further than, you know, our eyes, but they can see further than that, and I think we should tap on this particular potential. And of course, for sure, this is a century of a female century. By the end of the century, women will be not worried about the gender gap. I think men will be worried about the gender gap by the end of the century. However, for the energy transition, we need this to happen faster than. And this is my afternoon presentation. Thank you.
That was really excellent. Really enjoyed that. Taig, I think you wanted to say something to that?
I'm sorry for coming in again, but I wanted to highlight a bit of publicity. On Friday, but it was published on Monday, the Commission adopted a recommendation on energy poverty. Okay? And that recommendation touches on some of the issues that we've just had in this thing. So first of all, the role of energy communities and potential role of energy communities in addressing energy poverty and on gender equality. And to make it concrete, one of the things that inspired us in the unit was we did a site visit to where it was an energy community being implemented here in Brussels. We don't have that huge a travel budget, so we took the trip all the way down as far as the train station, but no further. And we visited an energy community. It was really and how it was in a social housing project, I guess, and how it was delivering on addressing energy poverty, on empowering consumers. And actually, it turned out, but this was not the intention we went down, it turned out in terms of bringing out this leadership I talked about and the role of women in driving the energy community within it. Now, there's a different discussion about tech things. But I wanted to really just highlight the fact that we have the energy poverty communication is out and that it's possibly of relevance to many of the people here.
Yes, maybe just to add to that, and thanks a lot for the information. We'll definitely have a look. That's done. I wanted to highlight, because it was you mentioned about the energy crisis, and we indeed have a lot of our members that during the energy crisis, they managed to keep the prices low for their members, especially because they are not for profit, so they didn't aim at profit making and making earning huge amount of money, but they had enough production to make sure that they keep the prices low for their members. We have a lot of examples from our members addressing and alleviating energy poverty and supporting at the local community vulnerable households. But I would just want to clarify that I don't think that the energy poverty issue is something that should be resolved only by energy communities. It's an issue that has to structurally be resolved at the national level and through proper legislation. And on this regard, I think we are a bit behind. And if I'm not mistaken, the first time that we have a definition of what energy poverty is in EU legislation is now with the Energy Efficiency Directive that came out of the Fit for 55 package, so it is very recent. And in RESCOOP EU, a colleague of mine is working on energy poverty and has done a policy recommendations document and was trying to map national legislations that have even a reference on energy poverty and energy communities, and it was very hard to find. Although, again, it's an obligation for member states to develop an enabling framework for energy communities that makes sure that also vulnerable households and energy poor households can participate in them. And from what I've have in mind so far, there are some copy-paste references that was mentioned that was not enough. There is a good example, or at least there was in the previous legislation in Greece, that allowed energy communities to provide electricity for free from their self-consumption project to vulnerable poor or energy poor households without these households needed to be a member in the community. So this is a great example of how legislation can enable energy communities to support energy poor households, and several of our members in Greece are actually doing that at the moment. So just to highlight that from the policy making side, a lot more effort is needed on that. It's not enough to just provide a bit of money every month during the winter months for these people to be able to afford energy. So we need a structured solution. And I think you also wanted to highlight something.
Diana's next.
I couldn't agree more, and I think it's also related to the fact, again, that energy poverty is also not always the same defined in the different national, member states, which I think is now also kind of a challenge, like how to deal with that. Since then, it's a question of always how to measure it, like what's actually the status quo. But yeah, I just wanted to underline, I think, it's more like a structural change. It must be kind of addressed at a national level. And of course, then energy communities can come in, can contribute, create an environment also to talk about energy. So I think a key challenge is always how to identify even the most vulnerable households. And I think opening up the discussion to even, discuss about energy, what are the different challenges we are facing, I think it's definitely an opportunity to bring people together.
Yeah, just one comment. I was working on the energy poverty with the city of Warsaw, this really is a city which is aware of all the problems, they're willing to cooperate. And one of the things we actually issued is that if we think about the energy poverty in a city like Warsaw, it's not scalable for other cities in Poland, because Warsaw is roughly 2 million people. The second biggest city will be Łódź, which is approximately 1 million. And it is about the budget, it's about the district heating network, about all the other possibilities. So in fact, one of the things when dealing with the energy poverty is that, for example, when we investigate it over the rural areas, it will mean a little bit different than in the big cities. And this is very often neglected because we assume, energy poverty is a term. No, in fact, it's kind of specific, and it's a big of a problem because in Poland we are facing these issues how to have one correct energy poverty definition, and in fact we have not, and it's still not a solved problem. And I would say it will be very different for all the European countries, as their energy mix is different, and therefore the solution to fix the problem is different as well.
Excellent. So I think we're just 1 minute over time, maybe 2. Maybe we might take one question from the audience. If anybody would like to ask something. I see a hand there.
Yeah, thank you very much for this interesting discussion. My name is Katharina. I'm from Women Engaged for Common Future, part of the Women for RES project. I'm also board member of Bündnis Bürgerenergie in Germany, which is the umbrella organization of energy communities. And I appreciate all the approaches, and my very general question is how to come out from the niche of energy communities. So in Germany we have more than 1,500 energy communities, more than 1,000 energy cooperatives because of different drivers, for example. And so what you have mentioned, Stavroula, what is the structured approach? And here I wanted to mention that in Austria, you all know that we have like a coordination office of the government, which shows a lot of establishments of energy communities. So it's not only money, but what approach do we really need, so to support and to empower the energy communities on the stage they are? That's one point. And the second point is for Mr. O'Brien, because you mentioned the electricity directives that now everybody is allowed to do energy sharing. So in Germany, we worked out a fantastic example, but the government haven't transposed it yet for energy communities. How can energy communities compete with the big players with to apply energy sharing? Thank you.
So who would like to take that one? I think. Yeah, I think so. Okay. Maybe yourself to start first.
Okay, I'll just start, but I don't want to. We could turn this into a symposium. I could put up a table here, and we could look at both how the legislative provisions work and how that overlaps onto the operation of the grid system. But I come back to one simple point. You said how can energy communities compete with the established players? You put it in the context of energy sharing. I think we can leave that to one side for a second. How they can compete as the question applies in both things. Energy communities can compete with the established players by offering to consumers something that meets their needs in a better way. Whether those needs are more stable long-term energy, whether those needs are a sense of participation in the community, whether those needs are a sense it will be cheaper, there are a series of needs, and that's how they will compete. Because they will be competing. Nobody's talking about abolishing established players. Energy sharing is a concept that sits on top of that. The biggest people who fear energy sharing are the established players. Why? Because what it does is, and I won't go through the full technique, it reduces the amount of electricity that you're buying from the established players. They will react, and correctly, by changing the way that they, which is going to happen, that your bills are going to be slightly higher if you've got a solar panel on your own roof or if you have access to energy sharing. Why? Because you've got a balancing risk for the company. But we're not going into that. They will react, but energy communities are in a better position to combine energy sharing and the normal supply business, I think, than other people. And I think that's one of the ways they will benefit. And energy communities have to offer something that speaks to the needs of the normal consumer. That's why we see a future for them. That's why those numbers I talked about at the beginning were there. It wasn't because the Commission is, we are neutral as to ownership. It's not because we have an ideological commitment to this, is that we see the benefits of community engagement and ownership in terms of delivering in and itself and in delivering the energy transition that we want to see and in delivering real benefits to consumers. But it won't happen because we write a law, simply it will happen because of actions on the ground, which at the end of the day is people like you are the 1,500. Now, I mentioned 1,500 member energy communities in Germany.
Maybe just to add to that as well. So I understand your question is not why people will choose energy communities and will understand the benefits and choose them instead of a normal supplier, but rather how they can actually participate in the market and compete with larger market actors. And we have seen already, so in the clean energy packets you already mentioned, the specificities of energy communities as non-professional market actors that are normally run by volunteers, that are normally do not have the funding, the necessary funding for their activities, that are not that professionalized, that they don't have the profit as their main purpose, face distinct barriers into competing, for instance, in support schemes for financial support for renewables. And we have, that is already established in the clean energy packets, that they have, because of these unique characteristics. There is a reference in the RED 2, in Article 22, paragraph 7, that says that the specificities of energy communities should be taken into account when member states design their support schemes for renewables. Therefore, we already see that the legislator makes sure that the member states understand these unique characteristics and provide something like we call in RESCUP-EU a bike lane for them to be able to participate in the market without discrimination. And we have great examples, one is in Germany and one is in Ireland, that in the support scheme part now, and I will go to the energy sharing. In Germany, they have introduced exceptions from tenders for citizen energy company projects, up to 6 megawatts and 18 megawatts for wind. So accepting them from having to compete with these larger market actors because they cannot really do it. In Ireland, there was a different approach for support for renewables. They have designed a separate renewable energy community tendering process, so that the energy communities only have to compete with each other and not with bigger market actors. So we have these examples. We have the establishment in the EU legislation that, because of the unique characteristics, special provisions are needed. And now going to the market design provisions that are now being negotiated in the trilogue phase, we see some risks connected with opening up energy sharing to larger market actors. For starters, this will mean that those larger market actors will occupy a large part of the grid, and one of the #1 issues that energy communities are facing at the moment is access to the grid. So this will be even harder for energy sharing projects for smaller actors. And we also see an issue with the reference there for third-party ownership of the installations for energy sharing. And to put it very simply, when an energy community wants to do an energy sharing project, and a third party, and not the members of the community, own this installation, they have no control over the production, and they have no control over the price that they have to pay. So the main reasoning behind having energy sharing now regulated is also to make sure, in this context of the energy crisis, that consumers and citizens have control over the price that they're going to pay, especially in a period of an energy crisis. And we see a risk when this is done through a third party that owns the installation. I won't go into too much detail. We have also been very active on this file. But Katarina, then your first question was very broad, I would say. It's a matter also, well, how I see it is that oftentimes what is lacking is a concrete one-stop shop that the citizens can go for different reasons. For instance, they can go to inform themselves of what an energy community is, but also to get technical expertise. And a great example of that is the CARE SIM in Scotland, that they have set up such a facility. Also, Ireland has done a great job with this. So we're happy to share some examples.
Okay, that's a comment. Very, we have to wrap it up. Okay, very, very short. I can tell that we experience great big resistance from the Danish government and from the energy sector in Denmark. So it's really a freedom fight, so to speak, to work for these energy communities. But for your information, what we try is we have organized an association of energy communities supporting each other in finding our way in the legal systems. So just practical information.
Yeah, so one important aspect is really, the recognition in the legislation. So also when it comes now to the transposition into the national laws, to really, take care that community energies are recognized and also, protected in a sense in the market. But in addition to that, especially for energy communities that are maybe not, or communities that want to get started, I think it really needs more support, like specific support services that are maybe set up by the government, like agencies where people can go to, can get help. And it can be also the one-stop shops that have been just mentioned, but I think that's really now the time, because the ones that have internally, the motivation and the knowledge, they may have started a process already, but if you really want to spread it, I think people like also that are unsure if they can do it and really need assistance and help, need to have a central point where they feel I can go to and I can receive the information I need to set up my own energy community.
Okay. Pavel, we'll have to, I hope you don't get too upset. So we leave it there.